Well, I didn't really know what to do for an intro, so here we are. Hello there, my name is Tanyawat Siwajana, and welcome back to Retranswap, the series where I talk, no longer yap, about Roblox transport games. I don't really call that yapping anymore because that's besides the point, but anywho. In this episode, a game that calls itself a signaling experience rather than a train game, even though it is. Dovedale Railway. You know what's gonna happen, so let's cut to the chase. Dovedale Railway was released in May of 2023, founded by creator Jaden, aka Clover Meadow, and according to the Discord server, they claim that it's an immersive and realistic British railway signalling game on Roblox. The game currently has over 1.5 million visits, just lagging behind White Coast City Railway, and a huge leap away from Grand Continental Railway and 4th Rails BR. Now, like many of the games I mentioned, Dovedale Railway uses a versioning system, you know, major, minor, patch. But because the history is rather cumbersome, and yeah, I know, I hate talking about that, and it's gonna be just me yapping for so long, I'm just gonna focus on mainly version 2.0. Version 2.0 added brand new driving and signaling systems, major station revamps, and revivals of a few old stations, with development starting as early as 2024 after version 1.2 was released. Now enough of that, let's move on to, you guessed it, the trains. Now oddly enough, unlike BR, SCR, GCR and those other games, Dovedale Railway doesn't have a unified spawning user interface. Instead you have to spawn at a depot just to spawn those trains. Well, let me show you. Clicking on the train spawner will spawns the train and you get teleported inside. Once you're in, you'd usually set your destination and begin driving. Like many of the simulators we've discussed, Dovedale uses a headcode system, where the first digit represents train priority, the second digit is the destination indicator, and the remaining two digits are randomized because they're unique identifiers. Like BR and GCR, Dovedale separates brake and throttle, so if you're transitioning from SCR, it might need a bit of getting used to, especially since the inputs are notched, requiring you to spam click the keys to operate, and according to the script, and in a similar function similar to row scale games on the market, Dovedale trains are able to be coupled to each other. But oh well, it didn't work this time. Nevertheless, most of the trains features are similar to those in other games, so let's talk about the trains themselves. Regrettably, some Dovedale Railway trains don't even have interiors, likely because the trains are actually scaled 1.5 times the size of the average Robloxian, so therefore you might have a bit of tight seating experience reminiscent of early SCR or even Mind the Gap. And their selection of trains are pretty cool as well. They have things like the Class 43, 150, 365, 465, and so on and so forth. Even the liveries are cool, very reminiscent of what British Rail used to use, but well, I guess that's that. Now, time to talk about the juicy stuff that is, you guessed it, signaling. Ah yes, signaling, signals, sausages, 6-7. Now, contrary to popular belief, you do not need to join the Dovedale Roblox group to get signaling roles, because you already can do it in the game itself if you had enough XP, which I'll talk about later, but if you earn a private server, then you could also get that perk for free. So let's just move on. Dovedale Railway uses traditional absolute block signaling systems on the network, making it the only train game that I've covered so far to require human supervision on both ends of the track, which makes it more realistic and worse if you're playing single player like I am. Basically, when you pull a lever, the signals signal. Thanks for watching my TED Talk. But yes, it really requires a lot of knowledge, wit, and experience to actually signal properly in both public and private servers. And therefore, it's recommended to read the handbook, which is somewhat long, but I can assure you it's easy when you read bit by bit. But if you don't want to do that, then I totally recommend CoRail's video on how to signal in 5 minutes, link down below. As you can see, you don't just signal the signals, but also switch the junctions, lower the level crossings, clear the lines for the next train, contacting other signalers by the telephone, and you guessed it, reading the map, which brings us to scenery. Yeah, I know, it's a bit of an overrated topic, but don't judge a book by its cover. As you can tell by many of these shots here, most of the railway lines are either single track or dual track, which makes it realistic considering that most of the network is a bit rural. And even the stations are distant enough for it, but however, it's much similar to other games, so let's just move on to some quirky parts of scenery that I've seen in the game. Like at Dovedale Central, where the station has a parcels point for the Red Star, as well as a Big Ben that has a bell that sounds a bit odd. Advertising is technically a thing, and many posters and facade designs are cool, and there's somehow so many Easter eggs. Which brings us to other features, aka the section of features where I do not know where to put, or just breaks the rules of reality as a whole, which is just sarcastic. Anywho, first of all, experience. Now bear with me here, every 10 seconds you get experience. That's the metric used to allow you to enter signal boxes as well as gain cosmetic rolls. See that tag above you? That's what I'm talking about. Alongside that, you could also get a few badges which segues to this section where there are loads of badges available for you to collect, both with XP or from other means. Mostly these badges revolve around achieving a few Easter eggs as well as achieving a certain number of XP or maybe even getting Maxwell. Yes, the Maxwell cat is not only existent in BR but also in Dovedale, and unlike BR, Maxwell's location is rather permanent. And finally, did you know that you can dispatch in Dovedale? Your initial backpack setup may have a whistle and a baton, so you're all set. And in addition, you could use the TRTS and CD knobs located on the platforms at some stations. Alongside those items, you get 3 flags, a green, a yellow and a red flag, and finally a bardic lamp for low visibility situations like night and fog. And finally, you guessed it, the community. Even though there's a bit of beef, cough cough lamppost, unlike the corporate stuff that is modding today's Roblox, Dovedale Railway's community has been an essential part of the game's success on the platform, with developers giving back to them by helping out every so often, like on moving from fandom to a custom media wiki and promoting virtual companies on their main server. They've also partnered with White Coast City Railway, you know, that game that isn't an SCL copy even though they mentioned that already on their wiki. Now for a game that has over 1 million visits, you may not be able to believe that there's a bit of open source baked inside of it. Dovedale's wiki has a live map, which is relied upon by many of its users, and thanks to much contribution by those developers, they've kept the inner workings hosted on GitHub, which is a very interesting sight to see. Although the Discord server has less than 6,000 members, it exactly represents how much of a community the player base is, and they've been very welcoming of those who are new to the ideas of British train games and signalling, and even so, there's a few people from Thailand there, so that's a shout out that I like to mention. Finally, despite the game's notoriety, there's not much of a variety of videos about this monstrosity of a game, even if the devs made a YouTube channel. It's interesting since the last episode it was the same case. Wow, what a very eventful episode that was. Actually uneventful, but I guess that's it. Dovedale, while being a signaling simulator and all, is still in heart a very amazing game, so I do recommend you to please check it out. I played it and it's pretty good. Finally, one note. Yes, the Transvibe will be back on hiatus. That's because I'm either lazy or I do not know what to actually cover. It's a bit hard to actually find topics to cover over Transvibe, but there's still a lot of anticipation about what's next for the majority of the games on the platform, like SCR's 2.2, BR's 1.4, and we're still waiting on updates regarding WCR's version 2. They said that they're going to be overhauling the whole game, but I guess there's not a lot of focus on that. I may or may not cover it, but I hope that these videos have really pushed a few boundaries on Roblox transport videos, and I guess that's it. I guess it's time for me to close up shop for now. That's it for this episode of Transvibe. Thank you for watching. Stay creative. Bye bye.